they all say. That's right, I'ma do this thing my way. Let's go. Been grinding hard on it all day. Okay, we work hard, then we all play. Yeah, I'm addicted to the grind, man. That's right, so I refuse to waste time, man. Yeah, one day it all will be fine, man. Let's go. Gotta commit to the climb.
End up transitioning into this whole world of coaching and especially focusing on men in general?
So it's a long story. It has to do with my story. So would you like me to start there?
Yeah, I love that.
Okay. So I, had a good childhood. My parents are still married. One thing they didn't do was teach me any sort of confidence or belief in myself. They didn't do this intentionally. I had one parent who was an over coddler, one parent who was very controlling and strict, and together just the combination led me to kind of strive for recognition, pleasing my dad, being okay with my mom's emotions. And then, as an adult, that becomes my responsibility to kind of be the person I need to be. But I didn't really get that until I was like literally 37 years old. So to backtrack a little bit from there, I was a toxic people pleaser, which I've kind of termed myself. I would have zero confidence, a complete lack of security in myself. So very insecure, very shy, no boundaries. I had no idea who I was belief-wise from the time I was in high school all the way till I was 37 years old. This led me to basically say yes to every single thing that was presented to me, whether or not my intuition, my instinct told me, no, run away. This is a really, really bad idea. You're going to get hurt. You're going to get burned. You're going to suffer. And so I felt all these things, but I didn't have the courage to follow it. I justified everything into being good because I had good intentions and I wanted good things. And I saw too many, I never saw the negative side of things, possibilities that could happen. So I was married. So I have 3 kids. Two of my 2 girls, the teenagers, have the same dad. I was married to him for a while. I got married very young. And again, had no idea who I was. There was an affair right off the bat, which I forgave and I moved on. And this kind of behavior just continued throughout the 8-year period. And I was afraid, I was ashamed. I didn't want anybody to know what it was like to live like that. And eventually, it kind of came to me that I was hurting my children by letting them be a part of this situation. And so I finally ended up telling my parents what was happening. And together we kind of made that divorce happen. And I have since forgiven their dad. And we have a good relationship now, 14 years later. So it's been good. Because of my own growth. But I didn't change at that point. I kept on repeating the same pattern, finding really bad relationships, a few of them, until I finally met the person who would take me to my rock bottom. I did not actually marry him. I met a guy. He and I long distance dated for almost 2 years. And then I decided, there were literally articles written about this person and their con activity, all the bad things that I should run away from immediately. But I justified it. I saw good. I saw, that I wanted to fix the situation because being a toxic people pleaser, you're also a fixer. And I went ahead, I ignored all the red flags against my intuition again. I felt literally sick to my stomach at times because I was going against whether it's God or my intuition or that equals the same thing. So it got to a point where I was being belittled, made fun of, walking around with a black cloud of shame above my head, which he created, but I chose to accept it. Ultimately, it's our own decision and response to situations that, like, nobody can make us feel something. Nobody can make us feel bad about ourselves but us. So I let it in. I accepted it. I moved my entire family across the state to another state, including my parents. I moved us to one place and I moved them about 2 hours away. So my children and I moved in with him. And immediately upon the move, I started getting physically abused as well. And I had never experienced anything like that before. I'd experienced verbal abuse for sure, but physical abuse, I didn't know how to handle. So I kind of was in shock and just let it happen because I was afraid and I didn't know what to do. I also, at this point, had started a business with this person, and I put in an ungodly amount of money into this business, all me, all my contribution, nothing from him as a business partner. It was well over any amount that I was comfortable contributing. And I took this from my family's partnership, which makes it even worse for me as a daughter to them. And again, this was all as a people-pleasing response to keep the relationship together, to make it work, to fix the situation, to try to have something good, even though I know it would never be good. So eventually, across the span of 11 months, he got worse and worse. And then it started happening to my little boy, who I haven't mentioned yet. My little boy is 9. He is very tiny, though, and he has special needs. He's very medically complex. And he also has a chromosome deletion that kind of broadly creates developmental delays, as well as midline medical complications. So he is a very special little boy, and he was becoming verbally abused as well. Fast forward a little bit, he was actually hit in the head. At that point, I knew that I had to change my life, because that wasn't just me getting negative things thrown at me. It was him. So the next day, I ran away in the middle of the night with my kids to where my parents had moved, where I had moved them. And together the next day, I started to change my life. I immediately got a therapist, a life coach, a business mentor. I immediately started a lawsuit to get all the money back that I had contributed to this, which was a fake business. It was just a mask to have a certain type of lifestyle that he wanted. That lawsuit ended up lasting 2 years, and I feel like I did a good job. So it wasn't a terrible, terrible story. It was a terrible story, but it could have been worse. But I immediately, started changing my life. I knew that I could never let anything like this happen to me again, because it was causing so much trauma to myself, my mental health, my children, what they were witnessing in their mother. So I started really digging deep and figuring out who I was. I made a promise to myself to be single for 2 to 3 years, and I'm still single 3.5 years later for a reason. I had to essentially redefine who I was, because I didn't know who I was, because I was always basing who I was on other people or other things that I didn't want to do. So I got to the bottom of things, and I created a new vision for myself. I figured out what my beliefs were spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, financially, what my mission is, what I want my legacy to be, all these things. I had to really dig deep to define what those were exactly. And that, along with therapy and life coaching and mentorship, I was able to create a new version of myself. And in turn, that new version of myself, because it was so clearly defined, was able to provide me with clarity, direction, easy decision-making, the strong desire to be bold and stand up for myself and only accept what I want that is aligned on the path of what I created in my vision. And all that just really changed my life. And I have never once strayed from being aligned in that path since. So I know for a fact that I will never let anything like that happen to me again. So I decided I wanted to share that with other people. And serving others has become the passion of my life. I just want to serve and serve and serve, help people become their best self and discover, their true passions, their purpose. Because a lot of us, especially as we reach like the 30s and 40s, we have no idea who we are. And I think this contributes to the concept of this like midlife crisis at some point. I think that's really, we get to a point to where we don't know who we are. We've defined ourselves by other things like our children or our spouse or our job, and haven't really taken the time to recognize who we are on a deeper level. And I think that is what my passion is, to help people discover that and watch it bloom. Throughout that process, I became really passionate about the concept of biblical masculinity. And I wasn't initially, it was kind of an accidental discovery, I guess. And the reason I'm so passionate about it is because of the types of men that I have had experiences with, and recognizing that, yes, I made mistakes in my choosing of a partner, but to be, I think, a healthy man and lead a family, there are certain things that you need to really define and live by. And so that's why I think that biblical masculinity, whether you are religious or not, the principles and concepts based on like how we were created to be as a man and woman in the Bible, I think those are really important, because I think the detrimental effects of a weak man, which is like this toxic masculinity type of person that everyone, thinks of when they even hear the word masculine at this point. The weak man is such a detriment to the family, to society, to his own self. I think it needs to be eradicated.
Yeah, and we've seen a lot of the aftermath of having weak men in particular in society, and just weak people in general. Why is a society with weak men so dangerous?
So first, let me kind of define more what a toxically masculine man would be, which is what, like I said before, we kind of tend to think of because society, the media, Hollywood has kind of driven us to automatically think of a certain type of person when we hear the word masculine. And I think this is the, yes, dangerous man, but in an impulsive, almost psychopathic way, whether it's with narcissism or abuse or using basically intimidation to have power over something. And it's egotistical. It's not it's not from a true place of self-confidence, because self-confidence requires no validation from anybody but yourself. So in contrast, we all, I think, anybody who's passionate about the subject has kind of a different definition of what biblical masculinity or masculinity in general may be. For me, I kind of came up with 8 different traits that I believe embody the word. And so the first one would be leadership, because leadership I think the man should be the leader of the household, no doubt. I think that's the way it was designed to be. And in a leader, I don't mean the boss. Leader as in a guide, a teacher, an encourager, a place of acceptance, and wanting the best for everybody in their individuality. I think strength and courage is a big one. And I think that also includes being dangerous, but in a sheathed self-control type of way, which is kind of controversial to some people. I think the word dangerous can mean so many things, like I just described with the toxic man. But dangerous in a healthy way is the capability to protect and provide and take the necessary risks to ensure the success of your family or yourself. And, you know, while you may have the ability and capability to defend, you don't have to use it. You keep it sheathed until it's absolutely necessary, which hopefully it never becomes necessary. But just to know that you have that self-control, which is what it boils down to, is self-control. I think that's very important for a masculine man to have. Another one that is also becoming controversial in my feedback that I'm getting is emotional vulnerability. And I think in order to be a strong man, you have to be vulnerable, and you have to express your feelings and your emotions to the people you care about. And that in turn opens up the door for them to do the same with you. It creates connection and trust. And a lot of men these days still have that mentality of, well, I'm never going to cry. I'm going to always like put on a facade of complete strength, and I don't care about anything, and I'm the strongest person in the world and nothing bothers me. But that's actually like completely wrong. You should be able to express your feelings. And like I said, it creates connection, and connection is the most important thing, connection and trust. So in any kind of relationship, whether it's your spouse or your children or your colleagues, your friends. So I think that vulnerability in any situation, any kind of relationship is really important. Responsibility. So owning your mistakes, owning your responsibility to your family, even giving tasks to your children the proper way, or your wife or your friends, or in the workplace. I mean, responsibility is very important. And again, there are not a lot of us who are completely responsible, and especially with owning your mistakes. And again, that maybe trickles back into emotional vulnerability. To be able to own your mistakes is a huge thing, and to, you know, accept your consequences for any of your bad choices, but then to be able to talk about it and learn from it, and you know, help others to do the same. Competence, I think, is a big one. So having like a very defined skill set in something that you're very good and passionate about, I think that's very important. I think that assertiveness is a big one. Being, you know, maybe this trickles back into a couple of the other ones as well, but being able to take risks, stand up for yourself in a mature way, not in an egotistical way, but being able to advocate for your family, for yourself, take risks and stand up for yourself, you know, be bold. That's what my motto for the year is be bold. Love would be one of the big ones. And the best way for me to describe that is, you know, if you think about whether you're religious or not, again, think about Jesus and the kind of man he was. He was loving, he was forgiving, he was compassionate, he was accepting, he was he was a teacher, he was a guide, he was all these things. He loved everybody unconditionally. And if you try to emulate that, even though we'll never be that, I think we're pretty close to true showing of love. And then the last one would be faith and growth. And again, I want this to be a value to everybody, not just people who believe in God. So the faith element, sure, for me, it would involve God, but it may not for somebody else. You know, it may be another religion or something, but being able to be the spiritual leader of your household in faith. And, even that could be faith in your consistent personal growth, so growth I coupled with faith. I think that growth as individuals, as a family, as a unit, growth in the workplace, I think just having that constant path with no ceiling to your growth and constantly, encouraging more and more. And what can I do better this week than last week? What can I do? What are our long-term goals and how can we get there with certain action steps? Like, I think that's important. So those would be my 8 traits of biblical masculinity.
Yeah, and I think those are all important, and from my perspective, at least, it seems like common sense, like leadership,
Yep.
right, taking care of others, strength, and that means emotional strength, spiritual strength, everything, not just physical strength, being assertive, love, faith, growth, being competent in whatever you do, whether that's taking care of your kids, whether it's at the workplace, and society, contributing to your neighborhood or wherever it is that you live. So what happened to those particular traits and principles over the years? Has from what I've been observing, and many others too, there seems to be an erosion of those basic principles and traits. And it seems to be systemic. It seems to be deliberate, intentional. And maybe you've observed that too, just objectively. And if you have, what have you observed? What exactly is happening? And then what are the consequences that we're seeing today based on that campaign to emasculate men?
Right. So I think the emasculation of men is definitely a real thing. And I've written a few pieces about it, and I have gotten so much pushback negatively, a lot positive as well, but people don't believe that it exists. I'm not sure why, but it's so prevalent in today's society. The weak man it's almost like, in my opinion, society, maybe the government, is trying to almost turn all the strong men into weak men with different measures in order to gain more control, because a weak man is not going to protect, provide, stand up for their family, stand up for their beliefs. They're going to go with the majority. And so maybe, that's one of the things that I feel is the biggest factor. Of course, it's perpetuated with Hollywood. You don't really ever see a truly masculine man in films anymore. It's always maybe part of it has to do with the big feminist movement, which I'm not opposed to. I think women should be feminine. I don't think they should be anti-masculine. I think there's a difference. I'm a very feminine person. I believe in my gender role, and I get a lot of hatred for that. But I think the big feminist movement itself is a big factor in the emasculation of men, because it's just nobody wants a true man anymore, even women. I mean, but I think still instinctively we do want that masculine traditional man. It's just no one. It's almost like also we're afraid to like maybe speak up and say that. So I feel like that gives me a source of fulfillment in speaking up against for my beliefs, I guess, on the subject. So, and I think we are raising boys a lot different than boys were raised even 20, 30 years ago. If you think about, boys in the 70s and 80s, even maybe in the 90s, they were still raised to be men. And now they're not at all. Schools are different. Parents are different. They just don't have the same principles or anything that we used to do as far as traditional family roles. The traditional family is the minority still. Like that, I think, is crazy, that the traditional family is a minority. And, with the trendiness and prevalence of gender pronouns, It's so widely spread in our schools. I'm not necessarily opposed to people using pronouns. I personally don't agree with it. I get why they're there. But that's again contributing to the emasculation of men, because boys see that, well, this boy is going by a they and this boy goes by a she. So like, what is actually a boy? And I think boys are being just groomed to be weak men overall. So
yeah, it's I saw there are a whole bunch of articles and headlines for the last 3 or 4 years, especially last 12 months or so. One of them was exercising too much is dangerous for men, and then it said especially white men. So they added the whole race campaign in there. Another headline said why the family unit is a bad idea. And there's a whole bunch of headlines and topics. So I'm going to do an episode on that topic with the actual proof and headlines of the campaign. Maybe you could join me in that. And we'll actually do some screen shares, and we'll show exactly how you can systematically convince and brainwash and influence society based on controlling the messaging, whether that's in culture, like in movies, whether that's in the controlled newspapers and headlines and online communication, social media, and so on and so forth. So because it is deliberate, people understand, and it's really not their fault. They're victims. A lot of the society you have from what I've been observing just objectively, because I didn't realize this was going on either. Like all of us were busy raising kids, we're working, all that stuff. But once you actually see it, and you see the formula that they use, and then you see exactly how they fill in the blank to manipulate whatever group they want to manipulate. And that's probably the most evil thing you could do, is to actually manipulate a society into a worse position. And that's adults, and of course, they're targeting children. And then so the hatred you're getting, or the pushback, are from victims of those campaigns that don't realize that they're actually being campaigned to. So to wake those people up, and they're victims, so they're actually on the victim side, with the rest of us. And some of us know that they're trying to victimize us, some of us don't. So I think it would be helpful and valuable, and this is my intention, is to actually shed light on these campaigns, because it's massive marketing, massive influential type campaigns, and being able to influence people is a formula. There's formulas used in marketing and business, and they use those same formulas to control society and groups and demographics. So that ties in with all the dad bod stuff we see in the movies that you kind of alluded to, the bumbling idiot males characters in all the sitcoms, which are all deliberate. All that stuff, very different than in the 80s and 90s, what I saw on the screen when I was growing up. And so that's why we see now, right? And then you have all these other movements and groups, whatever they're called, it's really irrelevant. But they're there intentionally to make sure they suppress males who are acting like males. And when I say males who are acting like males, that just means they're just genuine themselves. Elephants are going to act like elephants, lions are going to act like lions, birds are going to act like birds, right? That's just their nature. And so we see that. I'm going to be collecting all the information, all the proof, the evidence. And I think it'd be really helpful for people to actually see, oh, okay, yeah, this is actually very interesting. Because it's not just one article about this. It looks like all the other media and press at the same time, with the same verbiage, with the same story and the same headline, are jumping on the same exact thing. And this happens repeatedly, one after the other, whether it's Andrew Tate, whether it's some other masculine person, or whether it's somebody who was not supposed to speak out and act normal, and now they're no longer of use to the campaign. So now they're starting to discredit that particular person. So it's very, very systemic, very deliberate and intentional. So that's what you're seeing as well.
Absolutely. And, kind of that just makes me think about one other point. It's scientifically proven these days that the level of testosterone in men and even boys is like, I think I read somewhere that like the level of testosterone is more like a 60-year-old man used to have but in males who are in their 20s. And I think that is also done intentionally, whether it's through the environment, the Food and Drug Administration, I don't know, medical, it could be done I'm not sure exactly why, but it's done intentionally. And I think that's crazy to think about.
Yeah, testosterone levels have been going down. There's a whole bunch of case studies from all over the world about that. Fertility rates going down. There's massive amount of influence on the population based on what messaging is provided to them with respect to food, to what they're putting in their bodies. Cancer rates are way up high. People with autism is going up, and all sorts of other issues. And we don't know why, or we know why, but it's being suppressed because it's not profitable, or having strong and healthy people is not a good way to control people. So there's big issues. So yeah, for everyone listening, I'll be covering those topics. It's a very interesting topic. I think it's an important topic, and probably the number one topic. If you're alive and you're living on this planet, it affects you. It affects your income. It affects your school your kids go to. It affects your kids' future. It affects your health, your livelihood. It affects your relationships. During 2020, a whole bunch of families were having conflicts simply because people wanted to be injected with chemicals, other people didn't. So it literally affects everyone's lives. And I think it's the most important thing. So if there's a tremendous amount of stress, anxiety, uncertainty about what's happening now, about the future, and people's livelihoods and overall happiness, which is what you coach people on, the happiness and fulfillment and purpose. This is why there's a tremendous amount of outside influences. And the reality is, it's an easy fix. From my perspective, things could be fixed very, very simply, because it's a human issue. It's a man-made problem, and man-made problems can be fixed when you address the cause of the problem. So we'll be talking about that a lot on this channel, and look forward to having you on some more to actually go over those things, because there's a lot to talk about, and affects who you work with, your clientele, and the rest of the population, your children, my children, and everyone. And you mentioned something great on your post recently, and I'm just going to read it real quick. I printed it out. So you talk about serving selflessly, creating order and guidance, people, men who are masculine, humility, love, compassion, all that stuff. And you also mentioned the same should be applied when leading a business and a nation. And we could all imagine how great it would be to have a leader of the nation, whoever it might be, who actually has these guiding principles.
Right. And well, that would be a great thing. I hope it happens. I really do. Because I think a good leader could easily turn around what is happening in America right now. I'm actually very worried about America, as we all are at the moment. I mean, the dollar might lose its value completely. Our society is just, going back to the school systems and kids, I mean, things that are being taught to certain children in certain school districts are absolutely disgusting. And I can't really say it right now, but it's there are some things happening that need to be banned. Like it's pretty scary to have children growing up in today's world.
For sure. Yeah, having a right leader can easily turn things around, and easily means within, for me at least, a very short period of time, because it's an artificial campaign. right now. So these views and these beliefs that people have, they actually have from good intentions, the victims, if you will, in the population, not the decision makers at the top, who are implementing these campaigns against people. So these people have good intentions. Society does, and it's just a matter of exposing what's happening to them and how they're being used and manipulated. The right person can easily turn those things around. And then you mentioned also in your recent post that the being the right role model for the family, especially children, inspiration, encouragement, to be their best selves and how to live with vision, purpose, morality. That's extremely important for men, women alike.
Yeah.
Whether in leadership position or not. If you're a parent, newsflash, you're in the leadership position. Even if you're an employee, if you're a business owner, obviously, if you live on the planet, you actually are a leader, and you're affecting, influencing people around you in some way.
Exactly. And I think, again, going back to what you mentioned that I said, morality, that is a big one that it's not being addressed anymore. I don't think society doesn't have any morals anymore. I don't think we have any as a general group. And I think that could easily, again, be changed by a proper leader. It kind of makes me think of my favorite quote by Jordan Peterson, who is my favorite person. I'm obsessed with him. But he says, responsibility abdicated leads to tyranny. And I think I love that quote so much because it reminds me and everybody that you have to be responsible in all these different areas, especially society. Because if you are not responsible, something bad will happen. And that is what's happening right now.
Yeah, I agree. And the last thing you wrote in here that I printed was the goal of the leader should be to expand and help others expand, which is what I see you doing. So that's why I really think what you're doing is extremely valuable, and others like you. And I think it's incumbent upon us who realize what's going on to actually speak up, shed light on what's happening, and reach as many people as possible. So what are the first steps for men, whom you focus on when they're realizing that, okay, they really don't understand themselves as much as they want to. They're not living not living a purposeful life, and things of that nature. What are the first steps they can take to finally turn that around?
Well, so in my program, the first thing that I focus on before anything else, before we even really get into the meat of purpose and vision and passion, is the mindset. I think, we typically, even our brains are wired to live in a fear mindset. We just always focus on the negative way more than the positive. And I think to be able to change that first, to get that fear mindset into one of abundance. So where, you're focusing on the negative outcomes, possibilities, you're seeing your struggles as a brick wall to your success, to instead, and rejection, as well. Rejection is just the end of the world. And how can I ever get anything better because I keep getting rejected? Well, instead of that, to focus instead on the opposite of that. So my struggles, my story, everything I've been through, it is a tool for me to live a better life, to teach others, to serve, to see struggle as an opportunity to have a different story. So changing people's story about themselves first is the first thing I like to focus on. And I think it's a huge key. Seeing rejection as an opportunity to have better things come into your life, because what rejected you was not meant for you, and it probably would have led to bad things. It just, to actually believe that, though, it's a sense of freedom that you have. You take more risks, you take action. It's all, I think, a part of positive manifestation. And I think manifestation can be negative and positive. So if you focus again on all the negative things, more negativity will come to you. Oh my gosh, I'm going to get cancer. I'm afraid of this. I'm afraid of this. The chances are more likely that those things will actually happen. because our brain actually lives that, whether we are thinking it or actually experiencing it. So to focus on the positive and manifest that, I think that's really important. And that actually, but by taking action, which is a huge key of manifestation that people don't often think about. It's not just sitting on the couch thinking of good things coming to you, but taking action. So tailoring action steps is something I like to do as well to achieve the goals that I've quantified and broken down for people. I think that is what ultimately action and belief in yourself gets you to your goals.
So where can people reach out to you and follow you if they want to take those actions?
Yeah, so I am on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. I mostly use LinkedIn and Instagram. Jen, JENN.Jehl, JEHL on Instagram. And it's my name, Jennifer Jehl, on LinkedIn. And I would love to be able to help people find purpose.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I'm gonna put I will put all the links in the description so people could find you and get in touch and follow what you're saying and your messaging. And I would love to collaborate with you some more and others. We could bring in, some other people, figure out exactly how to help as many people as possible. Because I think, having a strong head on our shoulders, realizing what's happening in front of us. And that means analyzing, maybe not believing on the first go around, but just objectively analyzing and kind of questioning what's happening and just being able to have that ability to self-reflect and analyze things, I think is really important. And more people are able to reach more, I think society will thrive. And I think it's very, very important, especially on what's happening now and what may be happening in the future. So yeah, I would love to collaborate with you some more. Thanks for taking time to chat. Let's continue to stay in touch.
Yeah, definitely. And that would be fantastic to collaborate some in the future.
Sounds great, Jen. Yeah, thanks again. I appreciate it.
Yep. Bye.
Bye-bye now.
Yeah, let's go. I'm unstoppable, do the impossible. I'm irresponsible, yet I'm phenomenal. I got an arsenal, I'm dropping bombs, No, I'm not stopping, no. Conquer the obstacle. To the top, here I go, think I'm chosen to be the king of rock, think the people have spoken. I can hear the tick-tock of the clock, I'm in motion. So now I'm gonna pop, causing all this commotion.
Yeah, sometimes I think that I'm unstoppable. Yeah, ready to go, man, lock and load. That's right, I swear to God that I could drop you, bro. Yeah, I got a shot and I ain't stopping, no. That's how I know that I'm unstoppable. That's how I know that I'm unstoppable.
Yeah, let's go. I don't care what they all say. That's right, I'ma do this thing my way. Let's go. Been grinding hard on it all day. Okay, we work hard, then we all play. Yeah, I'm addicted to the grind, man. That's right. So I refuse to waste time, man. Yeah, one day it all will be fine, man. Let's go. Gotta commit to the climb, man. We're back with the Guinness, setting records every minute, every track, in addiction to the fact that we're winning. Still we lack, something's missing. Need a track that is hitting, making racks, making millions. That's the mission. I don't waste time, no, I make time. All these people wanna hate, fine, I'ma make mine. While you sitting there complaining, I'll be training. While you sitting there just waiting, I'm creating.
Yeah, sometimes I think that I'm unstoppable. Yeah, ready to go, man, lock and load. That's right, I swear to God that I could drop you, bro. Yeah, I got a shot and I ain't stopping, no. That's how I know that I'm unstoppable.